19 Black R&B legends who tragically died young from illness. What if I told you that some of the greatest black music legends in history were fighting deadly illnesses, emotional trauma, and silent suffering while the world applauded their success? Behind the beautiful voices of Aaliyah, Luther Vandross, Billie Holiday, Left Eye, and Donny Hathaway were heartbreaking battles with addiction, depression, cancer, lupus, and unimaginable pressure that fans rarely saw until it was too late. Some died at the peak of fame, while others slowly faded away behind closed doors, leaving millions shocked and devastated. Tonight, we're uncovering the painful truth behind these unforgettable stars and the tragedies that changed music history forever. Stay until the end, because some stories may completely break your heart. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment your thoughts below on Remembered Lives channel. Aaliyah. Aaliyah wasn't just a rising R&B star. By the early 2000s, she had already become the future of modern music. Born on January 16, 1979, in Brooklyn, New York, and raised in Detroit, Aaliyah entered the industry at an age when most children were still discovering who they were. With her soft voice, mysterious beauty, and calm confidence, she stood apart from nearly every young artist of her generation. Albums like One in a Million and Aaliyah transformed her into one of the most influential black female performers of the era, blending R&B, hip-hop, and futuristic production in ways the industry had never fully heard before. But behind the fame was a young woman carrying enormous pressure. After surviving early controversy surrounding her career and personal life, Aaliyah rebuilt her image with remarkable maturity. By 2001, she was not only dominating music charts, but also entering Hollywood through films like Romeo Must Die. Her future seemed limitless. Then came the trip to the Bahamas that changed everything forever. On August 25, 2001, after filming the music video for Rock the Boat, Aaliyah boarded a small private plane overloaded with passengers and equipment. According to official investigations, the aircraft exceeded its weight limit, and the pilot was later found to have cocaine and alcohol in his system. Seconds after takeoff, the plane crashed near Marsh Harbor Airport and burst into flames. Aaliyah and 8 others were killed instantly. She was only 22 years old. The shock devastated fans around the world because her death felt impossible to accept. She was young, successful, elegant, and seemingly just beginning her prime. Even today, many still wonder how far she could have gone had that flight never happened. Artists across multiple generations continue citing her influence on music, fashion, and female artistry. What makes Aaliyah's story so heartbreaking is not only the tragedy itself, but the feeling of unfinished greatness. She carried herself with unusual grace in an industry filled with chaos, and at the very moment the world finally saw her full potential, everything suddenly disappeared into silence. Donny Hathaway. Donny Hathaway possessed the kind of voice that could make pain sound beautiful. Born on October 1, 1945 in Chicago and raised in St. Louis, Hathaway became one of the most emotionally powerful singers in soul music history. His music carried warmth, vulnerability, and spiritual depth that few artists could ever replicate. Songs like A Song for You, Someday We'll All Be Free, and his unforgettable duets with Roberta Flack revealed a man capable of turning heartbreak into art with extraordinary honesty. During the late 1960s and 1970s, Hathaway built a reputation as both a brilliant vocalist and gifted arranger. But while audiences heard beauty in his music, very few understood the darkness quietly growing inside him. Behind the scenes, Donny battled paranoid schizophrenia, a severe mental illness that deeply affected his emotional stability and daily life. At a time when mental health carried enormous stigma, especially for black men, treatment options were limited, and public understanding was painfully low. Friends and collaborators later described periods where Hathaway became paranoid, withdrawn, and frightened, often believing people were trying to harm him. His condition worsened whenever he stopped taking medication, creating emotional swings that interrupted both his career and personal relationships. Yet, even through those struggles, he continued recording music that touched millions, because his pain gave his voice a haunting emotional realism audiences could feel instantly. On January 13, 1979, Hathaway was staying at New York's Essex House Hotel while working on new music. Earlier that evening, people around him reportedly noticed unusual behavior and emotional distress. Hours later, he fell from the 15th floor window of his hotel room and died at just 33 years old. Authorities ruled the death a suicide connected to complications from his mental illness. What still makes Donny Hathaway unforgettable is how deeply human his music feels even decades later. He did not simply sing songs. He exposed emotional wounds most people spend their lives trying to hide. Behind one of soul music's greatest voices was a man fighting a silent war inside his own mind, a battle tragically stronger than the world realized at the time. Barry White. Barry White didn't just sing love songs. He became the sound of romance itself. With that impossibly deep voice, elegant orchestration, and slow-burning passion in every lyric, Barry created music that defined generations. Born on September 12, 1944, in Galveston, Texas, and raised in south-central Los Angeles, he experienced hardship long before fame ever arrived. Poverty, street violence, and time spent in juvenile detention shaped his early years, but music eventually became his escape route. By the 1970s, Barry White had transformed into one of the biggest names in soul and R&B through timeless classics like Can't Get Enough of Your Love, Babe, You're the First, the Last, My Everything, and Never, Never Gonna Give Ya Up. Behind the smooth image, however, his health was slowly collapsing. Years of obesity, high blood pressure, and diabetes quietly damaged his body while he continued touring, recording, and performing for millions of fans around the world. Like many artists from his era, Barry rarely spoke publicly about physical suffering. He kept working even as his condition worsened, hiding exhaustion behind charm and professionalism. By the early 2000s, the situation became critical. Chronic hypertension severely damaged his kidneys, forcing him to undergo dialysis several times each week. The once powerful performer who had commanded arenas now spent long hours connected to machines simply trying to survive. Then came another devastating blow. In May 2003, Barry suffered a severe stroke while waiting for a kidney transplant. His speech, movement, and overall strength rapidly declined. On July 4, 2003, Barry White died at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles at just 58 years old. The official cause involved complications tied to kidney failure and hypertension. Fans across the world were stunned because the man whose voice symbolized passion and warmth had spent his final years trapped in physical pain few people fully understood. What makes Barry White's story so emotional is the contrast between his music and his suffering. His songs brought comfort, intimacy, and love into millions of homes. Yet behind the legendary voice was a man quietly fighting for his own survival. Even now, decades later, his music still feels alive, deep, soulful, and timeless, like the echo of a giant whose heart gave everything it had before finally breaking down. Minnie Riperton. Minnie Riperton possessed a voice so extraordinary that it almost sounded unreal. With her breathtaking 5-octave vocal range and signature whistle register, she created a sound unlike anyone else in music history. Born on November 8, 1947 in Chicago, Illinois, Minnie trained in opera and classical music as a child, before eventually bringing that technical brilliance into soul and R&B. By the 1970s, songs like Lovin' You turned her into an international sensation, admired not only for her vocal ability, but also for the warmth and tenderness she carried in every performance. But while the world celebrated her beauty and talent, Minnie was secretly facing a devastating medical battle. In 1976, at only 28 years old, she was diagnosed with breast cancer, a disease still poorly understood and rarely discussed publicly at the time. Doctors discovered the illness had already spread aggressively, forcing her to undergo a radical mastectomy. For many artists, such a diagnosis might have ended their careers completely. Minnie chose a different path. Instead of disappearing from public life, she continued performing, recording music, and even speaking openly about breast cancer awareness during a period when many women suffered in silence. Behind the scenes, however, the treatments were brutal. Chemotherapy drained her strength, hospital visits became constant, and the disease slowly spread throughout her body despite every effort to stop it. Even as her condition worsened, Minnie carried herself with extraordinary grace. Friends later described how she protected her family emotionally, especially her young children, while trying not to let the public see the full extent of her suffering. By 1979, the cancer had reached its final stages. Her body weakened dramatically, and she spent her final weeks hospitalized at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles. On July 12, 1979, Minnie Riperton died at only 31 years old, surrounded by loved ones. Her death devastated fans because it felt impossible that someone with such life, beauty, and talent could disappear so quickly. What makes Minnie's story unforgettable is not only her voice, but her courage. Even while facing death, she continued giving the world softness, hope, and music filled with love. Behind one of the most beautiful voices ever recorded was a woman quietly fighting a battle far crueler than most people ever knew. Heavy D. Heavy D was more than a rapper. He was energy, charisma, and warmth wrapped inside one unforgettable personality. Born Dwight Arrington Myers on May 24, 1967, in Jamaica, before later moving to Mount Vernon, New York, Heavy D became one of the most recognizable voices in late 1980s and early 1990s hip-hop. At a time when rap music was often defined by aggression and street tension, Heavy D brought something different: positivity, rhythm, humor, and smooth crossover appeal that connected hip-hop with R&B audiences worldwide. Songs like Now That We Found Love, Nuttin' But Love, and Somebody For Me helped transform him into a beloved cultural figure. But behind the infectious smile and larger-than-life stage presence was a man quietly carrying physical strain many fans never noticed. As the years passed, Heavy D struggled with weight-related health concerns and the intense demands of constant touring, performing, and entertainment pressure. Even though he remained active in music, television, and film, his body was dealing with challenges hidden beneath the confidence audiences saw publicly. In 2011, Heavy D had recently returned from a trip to Europe and appeared excited about new creative projects. Friends and fans believed he was entering a strong new chapter in life. Then, on November 8th, tragedy struck without warning. After returning to his Beverly Hills home from a shopping trip, Heavy D suddenly experienced severe breathing problems and collapsed outside his residence. Paramedics rushed him to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, but despite emergency treatment, he died only hours later. The official cause was later identified as a pulmonary embolism, a blood clot that traveled to his lungs. Investigators also noted deep vein thrombosis connected to prolonged travel as a contributing factor. He was only 44 years old. What made Heavy D's death especially heartbreaking was how sudden it felt. There was no long public illness, no farewell tour, no final goodbye. One moment he was laughing, creating, and planning for the future. The next, the music world was mourning another Black artist gone far too soon. Even today, Heavy D's legacy remains powerful because he represented joy during an era often filled with darkness. Behind the upbeat music and unforgettable voice was a man whose life ended quietly and unexpectedly, reminding the world how fragile even the brightest spirits can truly be. Phyllis Hyman. Phyllis Hyman had the kind of voice that could stop time. Elegant, emotional, and deeply soulful, she became one of the most respected vocalists in jazz and R&B during the late 1970s and 1980s. Born on July 6, 1949 in Philadelphia and raised in Pittsburgh, Phyllis stood out not only because of her remarkable talent, but also because of her striking beauty and commanding stage presence. Songs like Living All Alone, You Know How to Love Me, and Old Friend revealed a woman capable of turning heartbreak into something hauntingly beautiful. To audiences, she appeared graceful and powerful. But behind the applause, Phyllis was fighting emotional pain that grew heavier with time. Throughout much of her adult life, she quietly battled severe depression and bipolar disorder, struggles rarely discussed openly during that era, especially within the Black entertainment world. The pressure of fame, unstable relationships, loneliness, and industry expectations slowly wore down her emotional health, even as her career continued moving forward. Friends later revealed that Phyllis often experienced intense mood swings and periods of deep sadness hidden beneath her glamorous image. Despite her incredible talent, she carried painful insecurities and emotional exhaustion that many people around her failed to fully recognize. While audiences saw confidence on stage, privately she was struggling simply to find peace. On June 30, 1995, Phyllis was scheduled to perform at the famous Apollo Theater in Harlem, but she never made it to the stage. Earlier that day, she was found dead inside her New York apartment from an apparent suicide involving a drug overdose. A note discovered afterward revealed years of emotional suffering she had quietly endured behind closed doors. She was only 45 years old. The news devastated fans because Phyllis Hyman represented elegance, strength, and emotional honesty through music. Yet her death also exposed the painful reality that talent and fame cannot protect someone from mental illness. Today, her voice still carries extraordinary emotion because listeners can hear the vulnerability inside every lyric she sang. Behind the beauty and sophistication was a woman desperately searching for peace in a world that applauded her talent, but often overlooked her pain. Gerald Levert. Gerald Levert inherited greatness, but he also carried enormous pressure from the moment he entered music. Born on July 13, 1966 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Gerald was the son of legendary Eddie Levert from the iconic group The O'Jays. Growing up around fame and soul music gave him extraordinary inspiration, but it also created expectations few young artists could easily survive. Still, Gerald carved out his own identity through raw emotion, powerful vocals, and deeply personal songs that resonated strongly with R&B audiences during the 1980s and 1990s. As part of the group Levert, and later as a solo artist, Gerald delivered unforgettable hits like Casanova, Baby Hold On to Me, and Thinkin' About It. His voice carried passion, heartbreak, and maturity in a way that connected deeply with adult listeners. Unlike many performers chasing trends, Gerald specialized in emotional honesty. Fans trusted him because his music sounded lived in and real. But behind the success, Gerald struggled with serious health issues and the physical toll of years inside the entertainment industry. Weight problems, stress, chronic pain, and heavy medication use gradually affected his body. In the final years of his life, he reportedly suffered from shoulder and Achilles tendon injuries that required prescription medication for pain management. Tragically, those medications became part of the circumstances that led to his death. On November 10, 2006, Gerald Levert died unexpectedly at his home in Cleveland, Ohio. He was only 40 years old. An official autopsy later determined that his death resulted from an accidental overdose involving prescription drugs, including narcotic painkillers and anti-anxiety medication. The news shocked the music world because Gerald still seemed full of life, creativity, and future potential. What makes Gerald Levert's story especially heartbreaking is how deeply he valued family, love, and emotional connection through his music. Behind a powerful voice and confident stage presence was a man quietly battling physical pain and personal pressure few fans fully understood. Even today, his songs continue touching listeners because they carry genuine vulnerability from an artist who gave his heart completely to the music before his life ended far too soon. Tammi Terrell. Tammi Terrell brought joy into every song she touched. With her radiant smile, youthful energy, and natural chemistry beside Marvin Gaye, she became one of Motown's brightest stars during the 1960s. Born Thomasina Montgomery on April 29, 1945, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Tammi began performing professionally as a teenager and quickly caught the attention of major record labels. But it was her partnership with Marvin Gaye that transformed her into an unforgettable voice in soul music history. Together, they created timeless classics like Ain't No Mountain High Enough, Your Precious Love, and If I Could Build My Whole World Around You. To fans, Tammi seemed full of life and happiness. Yet behind the scenes, her health was deteriorating in terrifying ways. In October 1967, while performing with Marvin Gaye at Hampton University in Virginia, Tammi suddenly collapsed into his arms on stage. At first, many people believed it was simple exhaustion from touring. Doctors soon discovered something far more devastating: a malignant brain tumor. What followed was years of painful surgeries, treatments, and physical decline. Tammi underwent multiple operations as doctors desperately tried to stop the aggressive cancer spreading through her brain. The illness caused severe headaches, memory problems, exhaustion, and emotional suffering that gradually stole away the vibrant young woman audiences loved. Despite her condition, Motown still attempted to continue releasing music connected to her name, though much of her health had already collapsed behind closed doors. For Marvin Gaye, watching Tammi suffer became emotionally devastating. Many historians believe her illness deeply affected his mental health and changed him permanently as an artist. Meanwhile, Tammi herself spent much of her final years in hospitals instead of on stage. On March 16, 1970, Tammi Terrell died at only 24 years old after years of battling brain cancer. Her death shattered Motown fans across America because she represented youth, beauty, and hope during one of soul music's golden eras. Even today, Tammi's voice still feels alive every time her duets play on the radio. Behind those joyful love songs was a young woman courageously fighting unbearable pain while the world still saw only her beautiful smile. Luther Vandross. Luther Vandross didn't need flashy performances or controversy to become a legend. His voice alone carried enough emotion to touch millions of hearts across generations. Born on April 20th, 1951, in New York City, Luther grew up surrounded by gospel, soul, and classic vocal harmony that later shaped his unforgettable style. Before becoming a superstar himself, he spent years working behind the scenes as a background vocalist and songwriter for artists like David Bowie, Diana Ross, and Chaka Khan. But once songs like Never Too Much, Here and Now, and Dance with My Father reached the public, Luther became one of the greatest voices R&B had ever known. What made Luther special was not only his technical brilliance, but the vulnerability hidden inside every lyric. His music spoke directly to loneliness, heartbreak, devotion, and emotional longing in ways older audiences deeply connected with. Yet behind the smooth image and romantic ballads, Luther struggled privately with serious health issues for many years. Weight fluctuations, diabetes, hypertension, and exhaustion slowly affected his body while he continued touring and recording at a relentless pace. Despite the pressure, Luther rarely complained publicly. Friends often described him as deeply sensitive, private, and emotionally generous, even while carrying visible physical strain. By the early 2000s, his health had become increasingly fragile. Then, in April 2003, tragedy struck when Luther suffered a devastating stroke inside his New York home. The medical emergency left him partially unable to speak or move normally, forcing him into a long and painful rehabilitation process. Although he courageously attempted recovery and even returned briefly to public life, his body never fully healed. On July 1, 2005, Luther Vandross died at the age of 54 due to complications connected to the stroke and underlying health conditions. The loss shattered fans worldwide because Luther's voice had become deeply tied to love, memory, and emotional comfort for millions of people. Even today, his music still feels intimate and timeless. Behind one of the greatest voices in soul history was a man quietly fighting physical battles while continuing to give audiences warmth, tenderness, and unforgettable beauty through every song he sang. Billie Holiday. Billie Holiday did not simply sing music, she lived every painful word she performed. Born Eleanora Fagan on April 7, 1915, in Philadelphia and raised in Baltimore, Billie entered life surrounded by poverty, instability, and trauma. Her childhood was marked by neglect, abuse, and survival long before fame ever arrived. Yet from those hardships emerged one of the most emotionally powerful voices in music history. By the 1930s and 1940s, Billie Holiday had transformed jazz forever through haunting performances of songs like Strange Fruit, God Bless the Child, and Lover Man. Unlike singers who relied on vocal perfection, Billie carried emotion through phrasing, vulnerability, and raw honesty. Audiences did not just hear sadness in her voice, they felt it. But the pain listeners connected with so deeply also reflected the suffering consuming her private life. Throughout her career, Billie battled racism, abusive relationships, financial exploitation, and severe addiction problems that slowly destroyed both her health and emotional stability. Her recording of Strange Fruit, a chilling protest song about lynching in America, made her a cultural force far beyond music. Yet that courage also brought enormous pressure and surveillance during an era of racial hostility. As the years passed, alcohol and narcotics increasingly damaged her body. Arrests, legal troubles, and declining health followed her throughout the 1950s, while her voice grew weaker under the physical toll of addiction. By 1959, Billie Holiday was critically ill, with severe liver and heart complications caused largely by years of substance abuse. While hospitalized in New York, she was reportedly placed under police guard due to narcotics charges even as she lay dying. The image shocked many people. One of America's greatest singers spending her final days not surrounded by dignity, but under surveillance and legal pressure. On July 17, 1959, Billie Holiday died at just 44 years old. She reportedly had very little money left, despite changing music forever. What still makes Billie unforgettable is the brutal honesty inside her voice. Behind the legendary recordings was a woman carrying enormous pain while continuing to give the world extraordinary beauty. Her songs remain timeless because they came from real suffering, real loneliness, and a life that burned brightly long before it ended far too soon. Kenny Greene. Kenny Greene had one of the smoothest voices of the 1990s, yet his story became one of the most heartbreaking tragedies in modern R&B. Born on January 14, 1969 in Harlem, New York, Kenny rose to fame as the lead singer of the group Intro, a trio that helped define the emotional sound of early 1990s soul music. Songs like Come Inside, Ribbon in the Sky, and Love Thang showcased Kenny's rich vocals and remarkable ability to express vulnerability through music. At a time when R&B was becoming increasingly polished and commercial, Kenny's voice still carried raw emotion that deeply connected with listeners. Unlike many artists chasing flashy celebrity lifestyles, Kenny appeared quiet, thoughtful, and heavily devoted to music itself. But behind the success, he was fighting a private battle that very few people knew about publicly. During the 1990s, HIV/AIDS still carried enormous fear and stigma, especially inside the Black entertainment community. Many artists avoided discussing the disease openly because careers, reputations, and personal relationships could collapse overnight. As Kenny's health slowly declined, fans began noticing changes in his appearance and reduced public activity. Rumors spread, but official information remained limited for years. Behind closed doors, however, the illness was devastating his body. Despite worsening physical weakness, Kenny continued trying to work creatively while protecting his privacy from an industry often cruel toward vulnerable artists. By 2001, complications related to AIDS had become severe. Hospitalizations increased, his strength faded dramatically, and the once powerful vocalist who had captivated R&B audiences now struggled through constant medical battles. On October 13, 2001, Kenny Greene died at only 32 years old. The loss deeply affected longtime R&B fans because Kenny represented a generation of artists whose careers ended before they fully reached their potential. His death also highlighted the painful silence surrounding HIV/AIDS during that era, when fear often prevented honest public conversations about illness and treatment. Today, Kenny Greene's music still carries extraordinary emotional weight. Behind the smooth harmonies and romantic lyrics was a young man quietly fighting for his life while trying to preserve dignity, privacy, and hope in the face of a disease that stole away far too many gifted voices far too soon. Lisa Left Eye Lopes. Lisa Left Eye Lopes was impossible to ignore. Fearless, creative, unpredictable, and emotionally raw, she became one of the defining personalities of 1990s music through the legendary group TLC. Born on May 27, 1971, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Lisa brought energy and individuality into every performance, helping TLC become one of the best-selling female groups in history. Hits like Waterfalls, No Scrubs, and Creep dominated radio worldwide, but it was Left Eye's fiery personality and emotional honesty that made her unforgettable. Behind the fame, however, Lisa carried deep emotional struggles that often played out publicly. Her highly volatile relationship with football player Andre Rison became tabloid headlines throughout the 1990s, especially after the shocking incident in 1994, when she accidentally burned down his mansion during an argument. While the media often portrayed her as reckless or unstable, many people close to Lisa described someone searching desperately for peace, healing, and spiritual clarity beneath the chaos surrounding her life. As TLC's fame exploded internationally, the pressures of celebrity life intensified. Financial disputes inside the music industry, emotional exhaustion, and non-stop public scrutiny weighed heavily on her mental state. In her later years, Lisa became deeply interested in spirituality, self-discovery, and emotional healing, traveling frequently while trying to reconnect with herself away from the spotlight. Then came the devastating tragedy that shocked the music world. On April 25, 2002, while traveling in Honduras, Left Eye lost control of an SUV while attempting to avoid another vehicle on a narrow road. The car rolled multiple times, killing her instantly at only 30 years old. Several passengers survived, making the loss feel even more surreal and heartbreaking. What still makes Left Eye unforgettable is how intensely human she felt. She was brilliant, talented, emotional, flawed, and vulnerable all at once. Behind the bold image and rebellious spirit was a woman trying to survive fame while carrying emotional wounds few people fully understood. Even today, Left Eye remains one of music's most tragic and fascinating figures, a soul searching for healing while racing against pressures that ultimately moved faster than her fragile peace could keep up with. Sylvester. Sylvester was one of the most fearless performers music had ever seen. Long before the world became more open about identity and self-expression, he stood proudly in front of audiences exactly as he was: bold, glamorous, emotional, and completely unapologetic. Born Sylvester James Jr. on September 6, 1947, in Los Angeles, California, he grew up in a strict religious environment that often conflicted with his personality and sexuality. Music quickly became his escape from judgment and rejection. By the late 1970s, Sylvester had become a major disco icon through unforgettable hits like You Make Me Feel Mighty Real and Dance, Disco Heat. His powerful falsetto voice, dazzling fashion, and electrifying performances made him unlike anyone else in music. At a time when many artists hid who they truly were, Sylvester openly embraced individuality, becoming an important symbol within both Black and LGBTQ+ communities. But behind the glittering stage lights was a painful reality slowly unfolding. During the 1980s, the AIDS epidemic devastated thousands of lives, while fear and discrimination spread rapidly across America. Many celebrities remained silent about the disease, terrified of public backlash. Sylvester chose honesty. As his health declined, he publicly acknowledged his battle with AIDS and continued supporting awareness efforts even while physically suffering himself. Friends later described dramatic weight loss, exhaustion, and long periods of illness hidden behind moments of courage and emotional strength. The vibrant performer who once energized dance floors around the world gradually became weaker as the disease attacked his body. On December 16, 1988, Sylvester died in San Francisco at only 41 years old from complications related to AIDS. What still makes Sylvester unforgettable is not only his music, but his bravery. He faced illness during one of the most fearful periods in modern history without hiding his identity from the world. Behind the sequins, confidence, and unforgettable voice was a man fighting loneliness, discrimination, and physical suffering, while still inspiring millions to live honestly and fearlessly. Florence Ballard. Florence Ballard helped build one of the greatest female groups in music history, but her life eventually became one of Motown's saddest stories. Born on June 30, 1943, in Detroit, Michigan, Florence possessed a strong, soulful voice that immediately stood out. Alongside Diana Ross and Mary Wilson, she became a founding member of the Supremes, the legendary trio that dominated the 1960s with classics like Baby Love and Stop in the Name of Love. In the group's early years, Florence was known for her confidence, humor, and powerful stage presence. Many fans believed she had one of the strongest voices in the group, but as Motown increasingly pushed Diana Ross into the spotlight, Florence slowly began feeling isolated and emotionally pushed aside. Behind the glamorous dresses and worldwide success, tension inside the group quietly grew more painful each year. As the pressure intensified, Florence struggled emotionally and reportedly turned to alcohol while battling depression and deep insecurity. Publicly, the Supremes looked elegant and successful. Privately, Florence felt her importance disappearing. In 1967, after personal struggles and difficult performances, she was officially removed from the group. That moment devastated her emotionally and financially. After leaving Motown, Florence attempted a solo career but faced repeated disappointments. Without the support and visibility she once had, her life became increasingly difficult. Financial hardship, emotional exhaustion, and declining health slowly overwhelmed her during the following years. Then, tragedy struck suddenly. On February 22, 1976, Florence Ballard died from coronary thrombosis, a serious heart condition, at only 32 years old. Fans were shocked because the woman who once stood at the center of Motown greatness spent her final years largely forgotten by the industry she helped create. What makes Florence's story so heartbreaking is how quickly fame disappeared around her. Behind the success of the Supremes was a talented woman quietly fighting rejection, loneliness, and emotional pain long before her life ended far too soon. Pervis Jackson. Pervis Jackson spent decades helping create the smooth, emotional sound that made the Spinners one of the most beloved R&B groups in American music history. Born on August 13, 1938 in New Orleans, Louisiana, and later raised in Detroit, Pervis became known for his deep bass voice, calm stage presence, and unmatched harmony work that gave the Spinners their unmistakable sound. During the 1970s, the group dominated radio with classics like I'll Be Around, Could It Be I'm Falling in Love, and Then Came You, becoming one of the defining soul groups of the era. Unlike flashy frontmen constantly chasing headlines, Pervis remained respected for consistency, professionalism, and loyalty to the music itself. For years, audiences saw him as the steady foundation inside a group built around elegance and emotional storytelling. But behind the scenes, serious health problems slowly began affecting his life as he grew older. In the 2000s, Pervis battled both diabetes and cancer, illnesses that gradually weakened his body after decades spent touring and performing. Friends and fellow musicians later described long periods of medical treatment, exhaustion, and physical decline hidden away from the spotlight. Even while struggling with serious health complications, Pervis remained deeply connected to family and music, rarely seeking public sympathy for his condition. As the cancer spread to his liver and overall health deteriorated, his appearances became less frequent. Fans who once watched him perform effortlessly on stage now learned he was fighting a painful, private battle, far from the bright lights of the entertainment world. On August 18, 2008, Pervis Jackson died in Chicago at 70 years old after complications related to cancer. What makes Pervis Jackson's story especially emotional is the quiet dignity he carried throughout his life. He was never the loudest celebrity in the room, yet his voice helped shape countless memories for generations of soul music fans. Behind the smooth harmonies and romantic classics stood a man enduring physical suffering with grace and humility. Even today, every time the Spinners' music plays, audiences still hear the warmth and emotional depth Pervis brought into songs that continue comforting listeners decades after his passing. Gerald Levert. Gerald Levert was born into soul music royalty, but his life ended in tragedy long before he had the chance to fully enjoy the legacy surrounding him. Born on September 28, 1968, in Cleveland, Ohio, Sean was the son of legendary Eddie Levert of the O'Jays and the younger brother of Gerald Levert. Growing up inside one of R&B's most respected musical families placed enormous expectations on him from an early age, but Sean embraced music naturally through both solo projects and collaborations with his brother. During the late 1980s and 1990s, Sean built a loyal fan base with smooth vocals, emotional ballads, and charismatic performances that reflected the soulful traditions of his family. Yet behind the music, personal struggles and legal troubles occasionally disrupted his career. Despite those challenges, Sean remained deeply loved by fans who admired the warmth and sincerity he carried into his performances. Then came the devastating event that shocked the music world. In 2008, Sean was serving a short jail sentence in Ohio related to unpaid child support. While incarcerated, he reportedly began experiencing severe medical distress connected to hypertension and complications involving medications prescribed during his time in custody. Witnesses later described alarming physical reactions, confusion, and worsening health conditions in the hours before his death. On March 30, 2008, Gerald Levert died inside the Cuyahoga County Jail at only 39 years old. Official investigations later pointed toward complications involving medications and underlying health problems. His death triggered public outrage and legal scrutiny surrounding medical care inside correctional facilities, especially regarding how inmates with serious health conditions were treated. What made Sean's death especially heartbreaking was how sudden and preventable it appeared to many people close to him. Only 2 years earlier, the Levert family had already suffered another devastating loss when Gerald Levert died unexpectedly. Losing Sean so soon afterward left fans stunned, and his family emotionally shattered. Behind Gerald Levert's smooth voice and famous last name was a man trying to carry family legacy, personal pressure, and emotional struggles all at once. His tragic ending remains one of the most painful losses connected to modern R&B history. Dilla. Dilla changed hip-hop forever without ever needing fame, flashy interviews, or superstar attention. Born James DeWitt Yancey on February 7, 1974, in Detroit, Michigan, Dilla became one of the most respected producers in music history through pure creativity and musical genius. Long before streaming and social media transformed the industry, producers quietly shaped the sound behind legendary artists, and few did it better than Dilla. His unique drum patterns, soulful sampling style, and emotionally layered beats influenced an entire generation of hip-hop and R&B musicians. Artists like Common, Erykah Badu, The Roots, and A Tribe Called Quest all benefited from his extraordinary talent. But while his music inspired millions, Dilla's body was quietly collapsing. In the early 2000s, he was diagnosed with lupus, a severe autoimmune disease that attacks the body's organs and immune system. He also suffered from a rare blood disorder called thrombotic thrombocytopenic purpura, which caused extreme weakness and dangerous complications. As his condition worsened, simple daily activities became physically exhausting. Yet even while seriously ill, J. Dilla refused to stop creating music. Friends and collaborators later described him making beats from a hospital bed, surrounded by medical equipment, while continuing to work through pain most people could barely imagine enduring. His final album, Donuts, became one of hip-hop's most celebrated projects, partly because listeners later realized it was created while he was confronting death in real time. On February 10, 2006, only 3 days after his 32nd birthday, J. Dilla died in Los Angeles due to complications connected to lupus and his blood disorder. The loss devastated the music world because many believed his creative brilliance was still only beginning to fully unfold. What makes J. Dilla's story so emotional is the quiet determination behind it. He never chased celebrity attention or controversy. Instead, he poured his entire spirit into music, while his body slowly failed him. Behind some of hip-hop's most influential sounds was a man fighting unimaginable physical suffering while continuing to create beauty until the very end. Dinah Washington. Dinah Washington possessed one of the most commanding voices ever heard in American music. Nicknamed the Queen of the Blues, she became famous for her emotional intensity, sharp phrasing, and extraordinary versatility across jazz, blues, gospel, and R&B. Born Ruth Lee Jones on August 29, 1924, in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and raised in Chicago, Dinah began singing in church as a child before eventually entering the nightclub world that launched her career. By the 1950s, she had become one of the most respected Black female vocalists in the country through songs like What a Difference a Day Makes and This Bitter Earth. Unlike many singers of her era, Dinah carried a bold confidence both on and off stage. Her voice could sound elegant one moment and emotionally devastating the next. Audiences admired her strength, but behind the glamour and success was a life filled with emotional instability, difficult relationships, and growing dependence on alcohol and prescription medication. The pressures of constant touring, nightclub performances, and fame during the segregated entertainment era placed enormous strain on many Black artists, and Dinah was no exception. Friends later described periods of exhaustion and emotional turbulence hidden beneath her polished public image. As the years passed, substance use increasingly affected both her personal life and physical health. Then came the shocking tragedy that stunned the music industry. On December 14, 1963, Dinah Washington was found dead at her home in Detroit at only 39 years old. The official cause involved an accidental overdose connected to prescription sleeping pills and alcohol. Fans were devastated because Dinah still seemed to have years of music left inside her. What makes Dinah Washington's story especially heartbreaking is how much emotional pain could be heard inside her voice long before the world fully understood the struggles she carried privately. Behind the elegance, glamour, and legendary performances was a woman trying to survive pressure, loneliness, and addiction, during an era when mental health and emotional suffering were rarely discussed openly. Even today, Dinah's music still feels alive because every note carried truth. Her voice did not merely entertain people, it exposed heartbreak in its rawest and most human form. O'Kelly Isley Jr. O'Kelly Isley Jr. spent much of his life helping build one of the most influential family groups in music history. Born on December 12, 1937, in Cincinnati, Ohio, he was one of the founding members of the Isley Brothers, the legendary group that shaped generations of soul, funk, and R&B music. Alongside his brothers, O'Kelly helped create timeless classics like Shout, Twist and Shout, It's Your Thing, and For the Love of You. While younger audiences often focused on the group's lead singers and musicians, O'Kelly played a critical role behind the scenes through harmonies, songwriting support, stage coordination, and leadership inside the family business. For decades, the Isley brothers endured the exhausting realities of non-stop touring, recording sessions, and industry pressure. Like many artists from that generation, they often performed relentlessly with little rest, while carrying the emotional responsibility of supporting extended family through music success. O'Kelly became known as a stabilizing figure within the group, helping maintain unity during changing musical eras and internal challenges. But behind the scenes, years of stress and physical strain slowly affected his health. During the 1980s, O'Kelly began experiencing serious heart-related problems while still remaining involved with the group's activities. Friends and family later described growing concerns about exhaustion and declining physical condition, though public attention rarely focused on his struggles because he was not the group's most visible public personality. Then tragedy struck unexpectedly. On March 31, 1986, O'Kelly Isley Jr. suffered a fatal heart attack at only 48 years old. His sudden death devastated both his family and longtime fans, because the Isley brothers represented more than music. They symbolized family unity, resilience, and Black musical excellence across multiple generations. What makes O'Kelly's story especially emotional is how quietly he carried responsibility throughout his life. He was never the loudest celebrity or the face constantly chasing attention, yet his contributions helped shape one of the greatest groups in American music history. Behind the legendary harmonies and unforgettable songs was a man whose life ended far too early, after decades spent helping create music that still brings joy, love, and nostalgia to listeners around the world. Behind the legendary voices, gold records, and unforgettable performances were painful battles most fans never truly saw. From Aaliyah and Left Eye to Luther Vandross, Donny Hathaway, and Billie Holiday, these Black music legends gave the world timeless songs while quietly fighting illness, addiction, emotional trauma, and heartbreaking personal struggles. Some died suddenly at the peak of their careers, while others slowly faded under the weight of pain hidden behind fame. But looking back now, which loss do you believe hurt the music world the most? And which artist do you think still had the greatest unfinished potential? Share your thoughts in the comments because every generation remembers these legends differently. And if you love emotional Black celebrity stories and music history, don't forget to subscribe to Remembered Lives channel for more unforgettable journeys through the past.